Hi there. In this video, we're going to be tackling a few challenges using IQL. If you have not seen the previous videos and the Getting Started set of tutorials, it is strongly recommended that you cover them before proceeding with this video, assuming you're now already an IQL wizard, of course. You can download a config bundle via the link in the description in order to get all the prerequisites to follow along without interruption. In case you haven't seen the other Getting Started tutorials, we'll quickly gloss over what we have covered so far. First, we created a small beta model consisting of a few record tables representing users, the companies they work for, events they might be involved in, and log records to check working hours. We then configured a rudimentary user form for administrators, which was used to demonstrate differences between data section components, followed by a user profile/calendar form for low-level users to view relevant information to them or their colleagues, using Form IQL and filters. Lastly, we introduced Rules Manager and configured multiple rules to handle record names, relations, and some calculations. For the first challenge, we're going to add a repeater component to the profile form. You can access the component's raw JSON via the link in the description. It's also included in a bundle. Now, using the same component, we want the repeater to display different calendar event records based on who is viewing the form. When a user views their own profile, we want the repeater to show all upcoming events involving that user. And when a user is viewing the profile of another user, we want the repeater showing any event records where both users are involved. It might be relevant for you to know that we have a defined parameter that checks if the current user is the same as that of the currently selected user and returns it as a Boolean value. You can use that if you'd like. You should also configure the behavior of the heading to reflect what records are being shown back to the user. Okay, the training wheels have officially come off. Pause the video here and try this challenge on your own. Afterwards, keep watching to see how your solution compares to mine. Good luck. Welcome back. As mentioned previously, the flexibility of the IS Tools platform usually allows for multiple solutions to the same problem. Feel free to let us know in the comments if you have any suggestions or questions. Here's how I did it. In the IQL filter of the repeater component, I've created two sets of conditions separated by the OR keyword. The first contains the filter for when the user views your own profile. We can use this current user as a parameter to ascertain whether this is true. This is then followed by a bunch of AND conditions that filter out records related to the user via the linking table, then checks if the event has not yet concluded and if the status of the event is not canceled or preliminary. Lastly, the refresh parameter trick is applied so that the repeater refreshes if an event is created or edited using the event detail. The second part of the filter will trigger if is current user returns false, meaning the user is viewing another user's profile. Here, the filter is set to show records where the calendar event has a relation to both the user in the selector and the user record, which has the same record name as the current user union. We have applied the manual refresh here as well. Well done if you got everything working on your end. If not, try to be patient and keep practicing. There's a lot to learn here, and if you're new to coding, understanding the concepts at work here is very difficult and can often take quite some time. For the next challenge, you'll be creating a rule in a new scheduled rule group. Each rule group has a specific type, with normal being the default. For this group, which we call scheduled, we're going to select only scheduled and set the interval to day. This makes it so that any rule we place in this group will only trigger once every 24 hours and not by any changes made to our beta records. The rule that you're going to configure should send a personalized notification to each user in the app that summarizes their events for that day. If you're using the configuration bundle, the message template has already been provided in the actions. If you're following along from the previous video, take a moment now to pause the video and create a rule with the same properties that you see here. You also need to add a today's events note fields to the user table in the beta model. Note that even though this is a scheduled rule, we still need to provide at least one trigger, which cannot be a record keyword. It's a good idea to put consideration into which records need to be affected, as scheduled rules that involve large data sets can have a performance impact on the servers. In our case, we need the rule to execute for all of the user records, but since this only occurs once per day around midnight, it should only affect a small amount of users, if any. In a Run IQL field, we want to use conditional IQL to set the today's events note field to 3 different conditional values. The first should simply be a string stating that the user does not have any events that day. The second should be a text concatenation consisting of a string stating that the user has one event, followed by the name of the event and what time it starts. The last conditional value should provide a concatenation of the amount of events the user has that day, as well as the name and start time of the most imminent event, when they have more than one event. Did you get all that? Pause the video now and have a go. Good luck. How did you fare with this challenge? Here's my solution. First, a parameter is declared in sect of the return value of the count function, which counts the amount of occurrences of the field. In this case, the record name from the calendar event records that have a relation by at the linking table to be user record that triggered the loop, and also has a start time that occurs between today and tomorrow. Then, using the event count parameter, there are 4 separate if clauses, which will or will not be executed depending on the parameter value. If the user has no events that day, the today's events field is set to a string that reiterates that to the user. If the user has events, then 2 additional parameters are declared. The first event parameter uses a similar filter to the event count, but uses the min function to get the record with the earliest start from the filtered records. And the title first parameter acquires the event title from the record, which has the start time from first event. Depending on whether event count is exactly 1 or a higher number, today's events is set to 2 different concatenations accordingly. If it's 1, the message specifies 1 event, provides the title first title, followed by a formatted date based on the value of the first event parameter. Finally, if there is more than 1 event, a similar concatenation is set, but including the event count parameter as well. There are quite a few code blocks here, so you needn't be surprised if your IQL action looks quite different from mine, even if it follows the same flow of logic. Congratulations if you got it working on your own. As an optional bonus challenge, you can stylize the text in your notifications by modifying the template in the trigger action with Markdown, which is a markup language used with plain text editors. Note fields are also Markdown compatible. The last challenge I'll leave you with is this. Create a rule in the calendar event group that rounds the start fields to the nearest 5-minute interval, so that users don't accidentally schedule events at obscure times. For instance, 13 minutes and 12 seconds past 7 would be rounded to 15 minutes past 7. This may sound rather simple, but it's actually a electric unit it sounds. Pause now and have at it. Godspeed to you. Okay, how did you do? Not quite as simple as expected, right? Let's break down my solution. So, for starters, we declare a parameter and give it a formatted start date. Then we extract the seconds from start using the substring function, as well as the second digit of the minutes, which we convert into seconds before adding them together and storing our value in total seconds. Then we do the same thing for total minutes, but here we include all the minutes of the hour and convert everything into seconds. Next, we have appended minutes and appended hour, which will store the extracted tenths of minutes with an appended 10 minutes and the extracted hour with an additional hour appended respectively. Alrighty, next we have the set of conditions that will determine the value of our last parameter, rounded start, which we will then use to ultimately set the start time. Starting with the simplest scenario, if our total seconds parameter is less than 150, or 2.5 minutes, we will be rounding the minutes to 0. We can do this using the replace function on our existing start parameter and injecting the value 000 to our formatted date. If the total seconds value is greater than or equal to 450, or 7.5 minutes, we're instead going to round the minutes up to 10. Here we'll make use of the appended minutes parameter to add 1 to the tenths of minutes before setting the other single minutes and seconds to zeros. Note that the second part of the conditional statement, where the total minutes parameter is less than 3,450, checks that the time does not exceed 57 minutes and 30 seconds, as this would need to be rounded to a new hour, which is exactly what the next if statement does. The last conditional is an else statement that is triggered if none of the other nested statements return true. At this stage, we have exhausted all the other possible rounding scenarios. The only one remaining is to round the numbers either up or down to 5 minutes. We could be explicit about what the total seconds value should be here, but since we've already covered the other outcomes with the previous conditions, this would be superfluous. Make sure to test your code thoroughly, covering all the possible scenarios to make sure that there are no errors in the flow of logic. And that concludes today's challenges. Well done. If you're new to code and you are struggling with the challenges in this video, you can take solace in the fact that learning how to code is like learning any other language. And you probably wouldn't expect yourself to become fluent in, say, Mandarin or Farsi in only a week or two. All languages, programming ones included, require practice and maintenance to achieve and retain fluency. Until next time, bye-bye. IS Tools, digital empowerment for your workforce.